Hi, I'm Ron and this is my favourite object in this display. This bird up here is a female forest red-tailed black cockatoo. You can tell it's a female by its pale bone-coloured bill and by the beautiful yellow and orange and black banding on the undertail. The male has an all-black bill and a bright red panel under the tail. Now, although this is a very large iconic forest bird, we knew virtually very little about its breeding behaviour until we cranked up a research project on these birds about 15 years ago. One of the things that we found is that these birds mate for life. They don't breed till they're about 5 years of age. They return back to the same breeding hollow, same tree, each breeding season. They lay a single egg and only rear one chick. That chick is, although it's very well looked after, it takes around 18 months to 2 years for that chick virtually to become independent of the two adults. One of the things that we've noticed recently is that there's been a movement of these birds from the Darling Range out onto the Swan Coastal Plain. Now this is a very strange phenomenon because these birds were very localised in their distribution throughout the southwest, and by banding the birds and looking at their movements, we found that the birds didn't move very far at all. You could always pick up our banded birds within about a kilometre of their home range. But in recent times they've discovered a new food, an introduced food around Perth called Cape lilac. It has a large berry and the birds have learnt, as they did, a small group around Rollystone, learnt to feed on these berries. That spread down to Armidale, then onto Kelmscott, then along the Canning River to Gosnells, now throughout Perth. And throughout even the Perth city and right through to Fremantle, we're getting small groups of these birds feeding on Cape lilac and then returning back to the Darling Scarp to roost each night. They have what we call traditional roost sites, and that has been one of the ways we've unlocked some of their breeding biology. By following males from the roost site, that gives a male that makes a peculiar call as he leaves the roost. He calls the female off the nest because the female alone does all the incubating and brooding. He then feeds the female off the nest and she returns back to the hollow. This becomes very important because feeding regions are really important because the male virtually can only carry food for about 7 kilometres. So most of the breeding sites have got to be fairly close to favourable foraging areas where the birds can feed and the male can gorge up on food, and the bulk of their food is things such as the seeds of marri, which is the large honky nut, and one of the reasons it takes the chicks so long to become independent is it takes that long for them to learn how to get the seeds out of the marri nut. Some of their other foods include the seeds of jarrah and snotty gobbles throughout the Darling Range. But in Perth, it's mostly Cape lilac and a few other introduced trees. We are seeing a huge decline in the population of all of our black cockatoos in the southwest, mainly through the results of clearing during the 1940s through to the 70s. But we're hopeful now that through the introduction and use of things like artificial nest hollows and by learning a lot about the breeding biology of the birds, we can save these birds from extinction. We've developed artificial hollows with certain land care groups that have proved to be very successful, and indeed we've got birds now breeding, red-tailed black cockies, breeding in artificial PE or plastic hollows in the Murdoch University car park in an introduced tree. So we think we're well on the way to trying to save these birds from extinction.